We'll gear up for our second panel in this Hive session. This one's called Sustainable Intelligence, Designing Ethical and Green AI. You may have just be a sort of ChatGPT dabbler or maybe an expert, but I think it's probably fair to say that we're only really scratching the surface of how AI will impact or enable new capabilities, new ways of collaborating, new ways of designing in order to build, as we said at the top, the future we want, the future we choose. So to take us through this second panel discussion, I'd like to invite our chair, Andrew Hill, to come to the stage. Andrew is senior business writer for the Financial Times and consulting editor for FT Live, and he's going to introduce our panel.
Thank you very much, Joe, and it's a great pleasure to be here. My name is Andrew Hill, and I'm from the FT, which is one of the media partners, and we're delighted to be a media partner. If you think that the link between the FT and design is a difficult one to make, then you are not reading enough of the Financial Times. I'd recommend you get started with the weekend FT and start to see just how much we do on areas related to a lot of the points on the agenda. Not least the next one. We're moving from the human to the machine, hopefully without losing the human. Can I just say what an inspiring panel that last one was? Can I get another round of applause for that panel? It's a really hard act to follow, but we have an excellent panel. I'm going to break with Severa's tradition of bringing them on one by one, and I'm going to invite you to give them a round of applause as they all come up, and then I will introduce them once they're on stage. So we're joined by, on my left, Anne Asensio from Dassault Systèmes. We have at the far side Ramit Debner from Cambridge University, Matti Jetter from CGI, and Dominic Lasinger from Kearney. And we're going to discuss the critical question of sustainable intelligence. How do you design ethical and green AI ecosystems? And although Joe said at the beginning of the two sessions that he felt that we all knew what artificial intelligence was, I'm not so sure. And I'm going to ask each of our panelists just very briefly to give how they define AI for the purposes of this discussion, and also to just give us in brief an idea of how they are using AI in design to meet ethical and green goals. And Anne, you get to go first.
Okay, very good. So very nice being with you. I was just wondering, how to start to introduce artificial intelligence in an era where everybody is talking about it. It's just like a common ground that it's not just in Financial Times, actually. You cannot open a book right now and you have AI started or at the end of the sentence. Started by what is happening just on the top right here. This is quite incredible, So what is AI? Most of the people want to actually taking this as a technology, or a technical device, a tool, a solution. That's not the way I will do it. It may be a scientific revolution. The way I see it, for me, it's a social event. Because AI is not just a tool. It's been there for a very long time. It just happened with the power of chips and calculation and computer power. We suddenly see things that we have put in seeds a long time ago in our way of seeing the world through the calculus, through the way we can get numerical or laws in the way the nature and the world may be done, that one day we will be able to actually decipher the entire world. And today, suddenly, by this acceleration, we just get the feeling we just have touched the ground. So that's not my definition. To be a social event, what does it mean for me? Clearly, it means that artificial intelligence is basically already everywhere in our life in a pervasive way. It's getting typically in the notion of connecting two words that it sounds really weird. Artificial, I understand, computer, calculation, logic, but intelligence, that's another topic. Who on Earth can define what intelligence is? For a long time, it's been the purpose of being a human attribute, but not now anymore. So artificial intelligence is a social event because since the 18th century, I believe we have never had such a disruption in the way we see, the way we interact with each other. The language has been and made us through perception, logic, and also calculus with the symbolic sign, the ability for us to actually interact with each other and understanding each other, making contracts, allowing to understand each other, even from very far countries, through translation, and suddenly we have this artificial machine that just basically start to basically in the middle of our relationship. So that will be my definition. And so the way I use it, very quickly, because I think there will be a time for that later. For me, it's not a technology, it's not a solution. For me, it's a research program. That's what it is. And I put it into three categories. The first one is poetry, because I believe as designers, we're still very much in the capacity to express ourselves with symbolic sign, and AI is just like an acceleration of this empowerment. The second one is ethic, and I'm sure we're going to be discussing about that, and I call it ethic by design. That means getting really how we make, artificial intelligence ethical. The last one is politics. Clearly, if a new artificial agent is started to interact with any of the aspects of what makes us human, it becomes a political problem. And I stop there.
Okay, we'll come back to some of the practical ways in which you're applying it in a second. But Ramit, let me turn to you. How briefly do you define AI in your work, and how are you seeing it used to create these ethical and green goals?
Thank you. So I'm a professor of mathematics, and for me, AI is a bunch of math written in a linear way, but they are intended to behave in a non-linear way. And then that's where this non-linearity becomes a kind of looks like magic to a lot of the world. So one thing that I quite agree is it's very hard to define what is intelligence, but we have defined logic in many ways. I mean, someone who is in engineering or STEM, they know there are different logics, OR gate, AND gate, and so on stuff. And that's exactly what's being mimicked by a lot of AI that we see today. So how are we unpacking that? Because essentially there is a black box nature to it, and that's exactly what my work at Cambridge looks at. It's the human in the loop. So how do we bring in human and not make the kind of AI as one of the single entity that's going to make decisions for us. So it's basically recontextualizing how we can work with AI in a changing future. Same with design. One of the main things that we are trying to look at is seeing AI itself as a design problem, and specifically looking at all the moving parts that's slowly embedding across our kind of daily life in our society. And at the same point is on the ethics and the ethical concern with AI. So one question that we ask is, who is producing the knowledge for AI and by whom? And I think that remains a very clear and kind of a deep design question in itself, because we don't know who, we know for up to certain level that what's being used to train these AI tools, but who is producing those knowledge and how representative that is. So I think that's where I'll stop briefly now, and then we can discuss.
Let me just ask one follow-up question. Is your view that before anyone starts designing with AI, they should be able to answer that question about who has designed who has designed the AI?
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely, and I think that's in my day job of teaching design students. I think that's exactly what we start with. It's basically trying to get an idea of how much do you have an idea of the AI that you are using? The second is, if you are using this, how much alignment do you see it has with your kind of thinking. And I think that also connects with the last question, essentially, the use of AI in creativity and lots of other things.
Yeah, great. We'll come back to that. Matti, explain to us a little bit how you define AI in your work, which has spanned across a range of governmental and business and international development questions.
Thank you for that question. I was actually thinking about it, and I'm not going to define it using the classical definitions, large language models and so forth. I think I'll define AI from 3 lenses in terms of what we do as CGI. We're a large IT system integrator, and so the first side to AI for us is how we enable AI itself. We have data centers, platforms, and all of these systems that we build our AI on. And so that's one element of AI. I think the second element is what we do to enable others to succeed. We work with various governments around the world, and so AI in itself in products to enable others to work effectively. And then, of course, the third, I know we had a fantastic session previously, is the human side, the people side, people that are developing and designing AI. And so I think there are 3 sections or 3 areas to AI. I think the other side to it is not forgetting my role, of course, as Chief Sustainability Officer for CGI, is the fact that IT contributes 3 to 5% of the world's emissions, and that's predicted to go up to 25% by 2050. And a big part of that is AI is going to be a big contributing factor to that. But in reverse, we're also saying that 5.6 billion tons of emissions could be reduced annually as a result of AI. And so I'm approaching it from that perspective as well.
Yes, thank you. So what we're going to discuss, as you've already gathered, is 2 aspects mainly of AI and the design of AI. One, the use of AI to design products or to be used in products that enable us to meet some of these ethical and green goals. And then we'll move in the sort of second half of our discussion into some of the threats that Matti's alluded to of a system that may be designed to such a degree that it actually jeopardizes some of those ethical and green goals. And we're welcoming your questions. As before, please use the app to put in questions, and start doing it now so that when we get to the final 10 minutes, Joe will have plenty to choose from. Dominic, you get the last word of this first round. Tell me if you've got a different definition of AI. We've heard it's maths, we've heard it's data centers, we've heard it's poetry. What is it for you?
Yeah, I think so. Not much to add on the definition. I think I can talk a bit about how we use it. So we help companies to create or optimize products, physical products, usually. I think the first thing that I would add is the least sustainable thing you can do as a designer is to create a product that people don't love, because then you have already wasted all the resources that went into that process. So I think that is a big part where we use it, understanding what do people love and what makes them fall in love with products and brands. And there, of course, the whole mathematical approach and scraping data and making sense of large amount of data is super powerful. Then, of course, another thing that I think where AI has a big impact on product development and design, when you look how most companies create products, the process is the same since 50, maybe 100 years. They have a stage gate, probably 10 of them, different entities within the company do their work, they hand it over, the next entity does their work, hand it over. And that's why it takes them so long, and that's why, again, the failure rate of product development is 90% across industries. And that's very unsustainable. What AI can do is it can create way more and way faster feedback loops that turns this sequence more into a circle, and a way faster circle. So that's what we are trying to do. And I think that's one of the best ways that you can use AI to make more sustainable products. Then, of course, it helps you also a lot with complex decision-making quantification when you look at CO2 footprint, how long does it take you in your average organization to get that? When it comes to things like right to repair, that's going to come in the EU, how can I actually assess that? Is my design ready for that or not? These questions, I think AI can just make you more efficient, so you can create products that are, at the end, successful and also sustainable.
I think you said when we were preparing this session that the lab that you run for Kearney, which is looking at improving product excellence and efficiency and so on, is 1/3 scientists, 1/3 engineers, and 1/3 designers. Is that going to change as a result of AI? That's that balance, do you think? More scientists or more engineers?
So far, we have no indication of that. I mean, everybody is a bit half excited, half afraid. I think that's true for designers, it's true for the engineers, it's true for the management consultants. The perspective that we have today is, no, we're going to do better work and we're going to do it faster. But I mean, my experience has shown efficiency has never really cut across. It has increased the output, and you've been able to do more. I mean, as a consultant, you're probably closer to some of that. Consulting has been dead, I think, 5 times in the last 5 years. With the internet, with digitalization, with always, and I think it's similar now.
Right.
I think we're going to design better products, and we're going to do it faster, maybe. But I think yesterday we had a panel where the gentleman talked about the design of skyscrapers. He said 30 years ago, everybody told you, if you don't use all of these tools, you're not going to be able to do it. Today you have all of these tools, but all the companies are bigger because the skyscrapers have become so much more complex. I think that is what we're going to see.
Right. And let me come back to you because, as many people in this room will know, you cut your teeth in the automotive industry, designer of the Renault Scenic, the Clio, or in that sort of, that's where you earned your spurs as a designer. What do you see now in the way in which you're using AI that changes how design? Is design still, as Dominic suggests, it's just going to be possible to do things bigger and better because of AI?
So you know me very well, obviously. I think I will disagree a little bit with Dominic because that's exactly the reason I joined Dassault Systèmes. I worked in the car industry, and clearly that was exactly the process you described. And clearly I was saying that you can put more tools, more intelligence, more speed. It's just maybe better product, but still the same product that you just push on the market. And someone at the previous panel was said very nicely, I say, it's not such thing as designing starting from the product. The product is the end, but you have to start by the user, by the people, by the context. And if I may, because we are designing for planet, we may basically have the ambition as designer to start by the planet. So what does it mean? It means that as designers, for a long time, we were looking and accommodating with our own competency a system of optimization, but we never questioned the model in which we were working with. I mean, this has been largely discussed, previously in this, conference. So what would be my interest, and what was my interest, was that how designers have to shift more deeply in the way they basically can bring their competency, but get at the heart of it. A product is what you see, it's what you use, it's a life cycle. We used in Dassault Systèmes the product life cycle. But what designers do is basically the design intent. And what we consider as absolutely critical right now is an artificial intelligence is a model. It's a model based on data, on structure. It could be, and having a lot of bias depending of the way it's being designed. And I completely agree with what you just said earlier, both of you, about it has to be first design. So how do we design as designers a mathematical model? Because basically what artificial intelligence is everything you can calculate. What you cannot calculate is not in. And it's all what design is doing. So how do you do that? So that's why I consider artificial intelligence at Dassault Systèmes as an open question, as a research program, in which we basically are going from the big spectrum of art all the way to deep science, in even redefining what may be the current text-based LLM model to visual model, that means going even beyond image to behaviors, to even furthermore emotion. And we know since the 90s, the emotional models Because what we want and what we are targeting is care, dignity. How do you bake this aspect into an artificial intelligence data model? So within Dassault Systèmes, every time we do a product, we don't start with the product, we start with what is the model behind this product, with all the possibility of the variant. But how do you do that? By taking into account the framework, that means the milieu, or the three-dimensional space, because obviously we start from mathematics, you know, the theory of topos from Grothendieck, to just start from it. It's line, it's point, it's only what we can calculate of movement within a three-dimensional space that is virtual. So, long story short, wherever you do a scenic, or today, what will be the best context for being inclusive about gaining everyone living fairly in the world, you definitely need to put designers in designing that model.
Right.
And it's a huge endeavor, but we need to start now.
Sure. Matty, let me turn to you and just ask, you know, what's emerging from the use of AI in what CGI is doing? What kinds of things are coming out? Possibly also, how are you using AI in kind of developing those programs, products and services?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to touch on 3 examples of how we're using AI, just to sort of make it real, I think, for everyone. We know that we've got a challenge around water pollution, for example. As CGI, we've been looking at how do we tackle this challenge of water pollution? How do we use technology to support? And we've effectively used AI to help identify and pinpoint where pollution will likely occur within our waters, using different factors. And my colleague Anne's, elaborated on some of those. But various data sets and data points, satellite data, for example, historic data, anything that we can get our hands on to tell us what may provide an indication of where pollution may occur. So, for example, the growth of algae bloom. And so we're going into the science of AI. We're going into the sort of mathematics of AI. We're going into the people side of AI, people that are living within those communities and their consumption. We're going into the sort of data science of AI, the vegetation. We're going into weather patterns and really bringing those different complicated factors together to be able to help us with a challenge that we know we've had for such a long time. So I think that's one example. Another example is quite simply a charity that is looking to harness its data in order to support communities and families that are looking to understand and diagnose autism, for example. And so actually bringing those data sets together to be able to help them answer questions that may, for example, take 15 so many days to see a GP and so forth. So large language models and incorporating some of the principles of large language models in order to harness data sets together to inform quite simply what families may be dealing with behind the screen. Obviously not to say that that's the final end point, but there's human intervention thereafter. And then the use of some of our basic technologies. We've all got mobile phones here, but how do we use mobile phones and pictures and bring in machine vision and the use of capturing things like X and Y coordinates to address issues around invasive species? We've got a community here in the UK that's been trying to identify some invasive species in a part of the UK in order to eradicate it, because over time it will become a problem for that population. And so actually being able to build data sets from communities that may have never otherwise thought a database or a data set could be built by using AI, by using machine vision, by taking a picture, by capturing X and Y coordinates. So I think there are real live examples in which AI is actually supporting communities, perhaps without going into the science and the mathematics of it all. Am I an advocate? Yes, I am an advocate for the use of AI to support communities. But as and hopefully we'll unpack this a little bit more, there are challenges around it in terms of the ethics that I've got some thoughts on as well.
Yeah, I want to come to that in a second, but I just want to give Dominic a chance to, and then I'll come to Ramit on the wider ethics of AI and how we design our way into ethical AI or away from unethical AI. But just if you've got an example, perhaps an example that you've produced of AI-enabled design helping with some of the product that you're working on in the lab.
Yeah, I mean, a very practical example is we've worked on chargers of cars, the ones that you plug into the car. And I think the problem of it is, of course, you need to create a product that survives in the market, otherwise you haven't helped anyone. But how can you still make that happen and make it more sustainable? So where we used a lot AI is in the quantification. Because of course, whenever you make decisions on a product and in the design, it's a balance. And you have to find the best compromise. And where AI helps us a lot is to get quantification on drafts and on first ideas of products, right? To see, do they go in the right direction? Is it really the right trade-off that I'm making? Because I'm getting this much more sustainable, but maybe my price uptick is fine. I can live with that. So that's where we, for example, use. Okay. In that specific case, that everybody who wants to charge a car can buy in 2026, reduce the footprint by 80%.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that the AI is of use here in the design of services, partly, as you said, Matty, because it's unstructured data that designers have not been able to get access to or analyze in the past. And so is it a way of helping you to design something that tackles those wicked problems, as engineers like to call them? That's where AI can help out. Let me ask Ramit just to broaden this now. I mean, your work, as you've hinted, is about humans in the loop. I know that you've co-authored papers looking at, for example, the importance of humans in the loop when designing, in fact, climate action programs. Perhaps you could take us a little bit in that direction about how actually the human remains vital, because I don't want to lose the essence of the first panel this afternoon in talking too much about the machine. There's clearly people involved, hopefully designers.
Yeah, thank you. I think a lot of resonance from what has been discussed. So let me just kind of unpack one of the standard industry practice, especially in AI training models, where humans has always been someone who would annotate data, clean it, feed it back to the kind of the model, and that's how the model is refined and trained, and you get the accuracy. But this is not what we mean by human in the loop, because here human is just one tool, essentially, who is cleaning and feeding and kind of finalizing a AI model. But when we talk about human in the loop for real world problems, it's basically representing the local contexts which are being missed into this model. So again, I mean, a very practical example that we see is every time everyone uses ChatGPT, you are asked to rate it, to give a feedback, to do something to it, and the model learns based on it. So that's one example. But now take that and scale it to a place where there is a very less or noisy weather data from the weather station, but you need accurate forecasting. And then that's exactly what we see a lot in sub-Saharan context, where the weather stations are old and the data is quite noisy. And that's where we need more contextualized understanding of what's happening on ground, so that we have a better prediction of when is drought, when is extreme weather event happening in that case. So that's exactly a human in the loop kind of intervention there. The second example on that, scaling it down to a design challenge. So a lot of AI tools are coming up where architects can design and reiterate a lot of their plans very fast because of tools called GANs, which are generalized adversarial networks. It's again, I mean, technically it's a neural network model, but what's there, one of the context is, even if there are thousands of designs being output in a factor of minutes, you still need that architect skills to basically have a contextualized decision making on that. So very close to Dominic. So what's happening there? The whole human in the loop is actually helping make the decisions slightly more efficient and precise. So you have a lot to reject and focus on something that's more closer to what the user needs are. And same in medical science. A lot of, for example, the day before I was in a similar conference, and one of, after the panel, a student came in and he said he has a rare disease. And because of that rare disease, often doctors miss diagnosis because those are not something that you would usually see. And then he has to go through series of tests that are quite long. So with some of these AI tools, what's happening, he said, I just asked ChatGPT, and then it could really give me a ballpark idea around what can be the cause of that. And that's a rare disease in itself. So again, I mean, I'm not advocating that AI in healthcare is the way forward, but it's one example where actually these small contexts really help in saving some time, which otherwise would miss. And one practical example we are doing with Cambridge City Council is so they always have people, public opinion and kind of concern and comment voices, which they say they would take at least 390 days to go through them manually. So with natural language processing and some of LLMs, it's now summarizing those comments, and then it's being fed into the decision maker's table. So that's our project. Like, we call it ethical design of AI itself, because we are working with the decision maker as AI as a collaborative tool, not as a replacement tool for some of these summarization text. And LLMs are really good in summarization. So that's, I mean, I will give it to LLM that it's really good in doing that. So again, that's one example of how to approach as a kind of a big design challenge in itself.
Yes, I like that you brought collaboration in, because I know in the previous panel, obviously collaboration was critical to a lot of the community initiatives that we heard about, and there's a lot of talk in the world I come from about collaboration between the human team and the AI sort of sitting at the table. I mean, Anne, at Dassault, do you bring AI into the design meeting? How does that interaction work?
So we're going to start back to what is the most interesting input is we are designers, okay? Because we can talk about AI, we have to talk it from a design perspective. So I joined Dassault Systèmes as a designer because I have the curiosity about what the technology, not just AI, all of the technology that was already there before we start to talk about it as the buzzword of today, how to improve and empower designers, because as we can see, all of what we have to do when we want to do a creative work, the challenge is getting more and more complex. Whether it's a skyscraper, a car is connected now, it speaks, it gets autonomous, it's almost like an autonomous robot now. So looking at the complexity moving ahead as a designer, I knew that I was completely unequipped to actually execute those complex tasks, or being basically pushed on the corner, being just doing the aesthetic, the typical thing. So I joined Dassault Systèmes for that exact same purpose, and looking at artificial intelligence for the poetry. What I call the poetry is exactly what you just described. I mean, this how we are creating a reasoning dialogue with the agent. Because basically what artificial intelligence is, because that's where is the program, is being programmed for, is to be an intelligence in which you basically interact as a virtual companion. Someone that you will almost consider as a second being, not living being, but someone that you will be introducing within this community. I mean, this is the way it's going anyway. So what we are doing in the lab at Dassault Systèmes is basically trying to see what this dialogue is all about, okay? What is the good regime of interaction with an artificial intelligence? Because how do you want to frame and give to the data scientists that are programming The data model that you were describing, that will be saving money, that will be just taking into account all of the massive data about we can observe. Yes, but this has been group structure. How do you control, how do you design this structure? So, and I say design with a design mindset, okay? Because we can say design without a design mindset. That means with the purpose of being humanity-driven or planet, sustainably driven. So looking at that, basically we have what we call generative tools. We use that term because what artificial intelligence does, it's a huge transformation to all of the technology that we had before. It's not a machine. Artificial intelligence is a technology that can grow by itself. We are providing to artificial intelligence autonomy. That is the only one who has autonomy today is us, humans. So how we will be designed with someone, I call it someone because it's end up to be an agent that is so hard because he looks and behaves like a human. And it's going to be more and more. But it's not a human. How are we going to be interacting with? So this project basically lead to a very specific project, even a chair that we did with a designer. Generative design tools with artificial intelligence is basically if you have a data model where you have described all the parameters of the product, all functional, but also what we were also learning, not just the functional, but also the flows, the connection, the vectors, the relationship. So you design it as a system. We call ourselves Dassault Systèmes because we are creating software that allow a designer to translate the thinking that may come from a large community that has great idea into a system that then could be translated to the machine. So I call it pre-program. Okay, it's not a program from the requirement and the function that you know that are only being designed because it's only what you can calculate it. You put only the numeric numbers that you know, okay? And you basically exclude all of the impressibility of what you can put in it. Here it's exactly the opposite. You actually accept to put everything in it and you test it. So those generative tools are surprisingly creative. There are plenty, there are Gen AI. I mean, they are not just Dassault Systèmes providing those generative tools, but they are very, very useful for designers because they are basically mostly based on algorithms that are biomimicry driven, inspired, or whatever. So slowly but surely, if designers are really at the beginning, at the upfront of the creation of the model that AI then run, whatever is the evaluation and whatever we will be asking the AI to do, then we will be closer and closer and closer to behave and design like or with nature.
Okay, let me wrap the discussion there and move to the 10 minutes of your questions from Joe. Joe is there. I have other questions, not only, but there may be a question from the audience on this about what happens to designers in 5 years' time. If we don't get that question from the audience, I will put it right.
I would guess you probably will because there's 31 questions from the audience. So we're all going to cancel our dinner plans and just stay here. No, we're over a little bit, so I'm just going to ask for speedy answers from the panel. And I'm going to respect the upvoted questions that you've submitted, of which the top one was, is there a rule of thumb method for assessing the net planetary impact of using AI within sustainability?
I could probably take that. And there's many ways I could answer that. I'll just give a quick example of something that we did to assess the impact of AI on a couple of our platforms and the results of that. We basically set out to assess an AI financial powered platform. And what we did was to look at the different parameters that could help to reduce the emissions produced as a result of the AI itself supporting or working on that platform. We basically discovered that 50% of the platform's emissions could be reduced through IT architecture. The resources that were allocated, the infrastructure, the design of the architect itself of the platform. We also discovered that 25 to about 30% was as a result of the hosting environment itself. Renewable energy, where, who's the service provider, and just the activities that they had behind the scenes. The design of the data center, does it consider airflow or conditions, etc.? And then the remaining sort of 25% was the people that were designing the platform, the code that was being used, and the sort of loops within the code, and several other factors. So there are ways in which you can assess effectively the impact of AI and measure it. And we've got a couple of tools that we've built to be able to monitor performance counters from RAM, disk, and all sorts of activities within that.
Is it fair to say it's a bit more involved than a sort of rule of thumb?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I think that's good to know, because I think we want sort of quick ways to evaluate things, but when we're dealing with systems that are context dependent or complex, then it's a bit more difficult than saying, there's your answer.
I just want to interject on this one. If you have your data model that basically embedded the evaluation of the impact of AI within, we ask, the water consumption, the CO2 emission, the human activities, on a LCA, traditional model of traceability. Why don't put AI within it? It's, AI checking on AI.
Mm. Mark your own homework. John said, given the extractive nature of AI today, socially, economically, and environmentally, are there any companies even close to offering ethical and green AI?
I can probably answer that. I think from an IT, I'll approach it from an IT perspective. Did you want to?
No, go ahead.
Want to go for it? No, okay. Just checking. From an IT perspective, I think there are a lot of companies that are starting to look at the development of AI. And this is because with one lens, those organizations are being forced to look at it. The likes of, government regulation that is now mandating that we have to measure, monitor, and actually report on it. And then, of course, I think the rise of sustainability itself, consumers are actually demanding that companies mark their homework on AI. So it is evolving, and I think there's a lot more work, though, still to be done in terms of measuring and reporting on it.
Okay. I'm going to take the last question then, because we need to scuttle back to the main hall for the closing talks. Maybe this turns the responsibility on all of us, but on the audience as well. What role do we have in shaping the ethical use of AI to others as the design community? Maybe there's something that people could do tomorrow or next week that would seize their agency and shape it.
Very quickly, AI, we only talk about what is visible. That means the benefits. But AI is a lot of latent space, what a latency space. I recommend designers to unfold what AI means and get their eyes or hands inside.
Any other words from our panelists?
I can add one more. I think designers have a really big role to play, from service design to architecture design. And so embedding principles at the life cycle of each product or each development and at each phase, and being able to mark effectively the design of whether that's a service or whether that's the actual platform. And I think the role of the designer needs to evolve to include measuring, monitoring, and understanding the metrics underpinning sustainability in order to effectively design at each life cycle.
Perfect. Okay, huge round of applause for our panel. You can stay where you are, and then we'll do a mass rush for the exit. Thanks to everyone for joining this Hive session. What are we taking from it? For me, it's about thinking before we engage, whether that's AI or communities. Enjoy the rest of Congress. Go and get some refreshments and head back to the main hall.